Welcome to the Monocle Banking Podcast, where we lift the veil into the world of finance, leadership, and strategy with the people shaping the future of banking. I'm your host, Michael Avery, and today's episode, our 50th, it really does sneak up on you, promises a fascinating conversation with one of South Africa's most accomplished financial leaders. Joining me is Emrie Brown, CEO of RMB, whose career is nothing short of remarkable. From the cut and thrust of the dynamic world of corporate and investment banking and leveraged finance, and rising to the very top of RMB, where she was appointed CEO back in 2022, a couple of years after COVID. Under Emrie's leadership, I was looking at the Dealmakers rankings recently. RMB has really solidified its position as a dominant force in deal advisory, ranking second by deal value at 46.8 billion rand. That's 14.1% of the market. And first by deal flow, that's the number of transactions advised on at 18.9%, and many high-profile deals as well. So I think the numbers just represent just a testament to the bank's strategic vision under Emrie and the ability to deliver in what has been a very challenging M&A market, to put it politely. We've seen RMB at the forefront of some of South Africa's most notable transactions, from advising Life Healthcare on the 21 billion rand disposal of Alliance Medical Group, to guiding the buyout of Studio 88 by Mr. Price for 3.3 billion rand. I think RMB has consistently demonstrated its ability to navigate complex, high-stakes negotiations. The bank was also instrumental in major deals like Petronas' sale of its stake in Engen to Vivo Energy, and Liberty's reabsorption of Liberty 2 Degrees, illustrating a very deep and varied expertise across different sectors. So in today's conversation, we're going to dive into some of the evolving trends in South Africa's M&A landscape, how RMB continues to build on its legacy of innovation and excellence, and we'll also explore Emrie's perspective on leadership and her personal growth. But we're not here to ask the usual questions about women in business. Instead, we want to dig a little deeper into the mindset and strategy and vision that have driven her success. So if you're curious about how one of South Africa's most dynamic banking leaders sees the future of finance, the keys to sustainable growth, and what keeps her up at night, then this conversation is for you. Well, let's get right into it. Emrie Brown, welcome to the Monocle Banking Podcast. I hope you're well as the curtain starts to draw on what has been a very busy year in markets.
Hi, Michael. Yes, thank you for having me. And I think we are all looking forward to a well-deserved break over the December holidays. It's been quite a year.
Absolutely. I, for one, feel like I'm dipping into the final reserves in a rather empty tank just to get over the line. Now, you've often described careers in finance as more like jungle gyms than ladders, which is an interesting description. How has that mindset shaped your journey within RMB, and how do you apply it when mentoring the next generation of professionals who are finding their own way in a very competitive field of corporate investment banking?
And Michael, I would say this mindset has really had a profound impact on my career at RMB, and it has undoubtedly prepared me for this role of CEO. But I think that I see it that you can kind of take two routes in your career, of courses of action. And some people like to stick to the path that you can see ahead of you, become a deep expert in a specific field. And that works for many people. I think for me personally, I really believe in the power of continuous learning, expanding your mind and your perspectives. And that's really why I compare it to a jungle gym, because, this world, if you venture into the unknown, if that's what excites you, then, it requires courage and curiosity to venture into that unknown and to learn. As you said, you have to dig deep. But if you choose this path, you need to dig deep, develop that belief in yourself, and that you believe that you can do so much more than what you can see from your current perspective. I think it also requires humility and resilience, as you realize there's so much you don't know. And you need to lean on others, as you climb this jungle gym. And then, of course, passion. You need to love being on that jungle gym as it drives you to keep going even when things are tough. Courage, curiosity, humility, passion, and resilience, for me, are qualities that I found invaluable in my leadership journey. And then, like on a difficult jungle gym, you can't do it yourself. And I believe in teamwork, surrounding yourself with people that back you and believe in you, and that together you can succeed. And that's what I loved about corporate and investment banking. And that's why I think, to tackle it like a jungle gym is so appropriate, because through the course I took in my career, I got exposure to different areas. You might sometimes have to take a bit of a step back on this jungle gym to really get to the next level. And in the end, you gain so much knowledge and experience that it actually propels you to unimaginable heights on your jungle gym. And at the end, it rewarded me with a meaningful career.
And I think it's a perspective that really encourages professionals to embrace, as you say, the diversity of experiences. And they might not be linear. It recognizes that sometimes lateral moves, varied responsibilities can contribute more significantly to personal and professional growth. And I think there's a really important message in that for others who are equally driven and ambitious and talented as well. But, I was reading in one of your previous interviews in the transcript that you're someone who never saw herself in a corner office. How did you adapt to the changing nature of your leadership roles over time? Was there a specific moment or a decision that fundamentally shifted how you viewed leadership in banking?
I think, Michael, for me, it was a real privilege to be given the opportunity to lead a team in 2005. And I think even in that moment, I realized the enormous responsibility that comes with a leadership role, because ultimately you're accountable for the success of the business, but you're also responsible for the team and for those people that put their trust in you to lead them. And I think for me, why I really enjoyed this journey was I enjoy a challenge. I enjoy taking something on where I have to stretch myself. And that's really where the adaptation comes in, because each of these roles brought their own unique challenges, different people that you have to deal with. And I think for me, I had to adapt my style. But also, I think there's a core part of leadership that irrespective of the role you find yourself in, it's equally relevant and important. And for me, that's really where I just realized in my journey, things like authenticity, courage, to be inspiring and motivating to your team, to empower them, your humility, your resilience. All those things are applicable whether you're responsible for a team of 10 people or like I am today, 3,000 people. And it's really, the journey was just about growing as a leader, learning from your failures and make those propel you to even be better in your next role.
It's a very humble reflection on the huge responsibility that is imbued upon one in such a position, as RMB has for many years been one of the top corporate and investment bankings in the country. Almost for as long as I can remember in working with deal makers, RMB was always up there when it came to the big awards by investment value and flow and advising on the big deals. Did you ever find that daunting? Were there moments where you thought, jeepers, we all suffer, I guess, from a bit of imposter syndrome at times?
I mean, I think that, my career has now been spanning 27 years, and there's been many times where, you think, do I belong? But, in that, you kind of find your purpose, your meaning. And I think that in these challenging experiences, these transactions that you think, well, is there a way out? That's really what is that moment of growth, that you find a way through it. And I think that is really what makes our career so rewarding and filled with purpose, that we can actually contribute in a meaningful way in making the impossible possible.
That's what I really love about M&A, is its activity that is so vital to the dynamism, the health of an economy, at the very highest level. It's about enabling companies to grow via mergers or acquisitions or consolidations or buyouts or whatever it is. And it is really the lifeblood of an economy. And we'll come to maybe how we're throttling that lifeblood a little bit through overregulation in South Africa. But firstly, at a very broad level, it was encouraging to see from the deal makers' numbers that the total M&A market recorded a bit of an uptick in the third quarter. It was a very subdued Q1 and 2, I guess, with everyone just sitting and waiting to see what would happen with the Government of National Unity. But a good uptick in Q3, 223 deals valued at just under 200 billion is the total for the year so far. With M&A activity in South Africa having been subdued for several years now, though, what are the key factors that you believe will reignite deal making, particularly in light of, I mentioned, the newly formed Government of National Unity and the anticipated easing of global interest rates? Do you think we are potentially now sitting on the cusp of another, I wouldn't say gilded age for M&A, but at least a much better period than what we've seen over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I would say that in short, I am very excited about the next, I would say, time in M&A because, as you know, M&A and deal making are driven by investor sentiment. So we definitely think the factors such as the political environment, our government of national unity, the interest rate and inflationary outlook could translate in increased activity over the next 18 months. So I think the investor sentiment can be uplifted as we can see more progress on our headline issues, the infrastructure issues, crime and corruption, turnaround of the SOEs. Those are all well known to all of us. And the positive is that the GNU seems to be focused on addressing these headline growth issues. So I think we expect an improvement in GDP growth over the near term. And even globally, we can see that there is a bit of an uptick in M&A activity, and that normally translates into increased activity in South Africa as well. I think that, what we're seeing playing out, which is what excites us, is the international interest in South African businesses. People have always watched South Africa carefully, and I think that as we go into a much more positive cycle, I think we'll see that increase. We've seen the domestic consolidation in certain areas. I mean, the recent transaction between 91 and Sanlam Investment Management, I think that, all the South African corporates have really delevered over an extended period of time. They're seeking efficiencies. They've refocused their strategies. Therefore, I think domestic consolidation is an important part of the growth of our economy. And, even in private equity, I think there's still healthy levels of capital available. Private capital is playing a role in South Africa. So I think we are seeing some positivity and hope amongst our corporate clients. I think people want to play their part in the growth of South Africa. And combined with the international interest, we're really feeling positive about the M&A outlook in the short term.
And that's really encouraging to hear, and sentiment that I've heard echoed elsewhere amongst executives. Chatting to Mpumi Madisa of Bidvest not too long ago, they're certainly rethinking their capital allocation to South Africa, and they were underweight. They're now at neutral and with the potential to go overweight if we to continue to see this reform agenda move forward at the pace that it has been going. In fact, we certainly hope it can increase. But sustainability, and we're chatting now just at the conclusion of COP29, there's been a lot of talk around whether or not the global north has come to the party with enough. There's a lot of cynicism around these COPs and whether or not they've just become very expensive talk shows and actually distract us from the real issues. But the thing is, sustainable finance and ESG are certainly not going anywhere, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum. You've spoken about the growth potential for RMB in sustainable finance. So maybe you could just share some specific areas where you see the biggest opportunities emerging and how you envision RMB's role in driving ESG-linked investments, both locally and across Africa.
Michael, a strategic priority for RMB is to integrate sustainable finance actually into all aspects of our business activities. So it's not just one focus area for us. We think through all of our client engagements, all of our solutions that we offer, how can we bring sustainability into that which we offer our clients? And we're also seeing that investor demand for ESG considerations, as well as regulatory and policy changes, are really driving unprecedented growth in sustainable finance. And aligned to capturing this growth opportunity, we've set a target for ourselves to facilitate 200 billion in sustainable finance by 2026. So we think that there's a big opportunity. For us, what we try to do to differentiate ourselves is to look at continuous innovation. We've pioneered green loans, bonds, deposits, social loans, sustainability-linked loans in South Africa, but as well as in broader Africa. So we're now actually looking at the next frontier of sustainable financing because we think the market is poised for a leapfrog to embrace innovative financial products that unlock significant environmental and social impact. And we think that this evolution will include carbon finance and trading, natural capital solutions and blended finance, financial instruments that really have the potential to truly transform the industry and ultimately the planet.
I noted earlier this year that you partnered with climate tech firm Cocoa, acting as a lead arranger and the financier for what is a very innovative carbon financing solution. Cocoa is looking to provide bioethanol cooking fuel to over 1 million homes, obviously reducing reliance on polluting fuels like charcoal. And there is so much scope here to innovate and find these solutions. I think one of the challenges you've identified in an organization such as RMB is retaining top talent, particularly with young professionals being highly mobile nowadays. And after COVID, I think there was something of a severing of the work-social umbilical cord, so to speak. When we all worked remotely, those cultural ties that kept us together around the water cooler, for example, they just diminished a little working from home. So it is a challenge. What strategies are you employing to ensure that RMB remains an attractive place for the top talent in the industry? And how are you preparing for the inevitable competition that we're going to see from global institutions?
Yeah, Michael, I must say the global institution, what it offers, our young talent is something that I think we always keep in mind, and one can understand why the youth go for these opportunities. It expands their perspectives, their horizons, whereas they earn hard currency. So the way we think about it in RMB is really to think about what could we offer ambitious young talent. And so it's really focusing on our strategies. We can't compete against the global institutions. But as you say, this talent attraction and retention for me is what I call, one of my keep me up at night lists. It's at the top there because there is a war for talent, not just the global institutions. Locally we've got competitors, but we find that often the attraction now lies outside of financial services. Fintechs, a lot of the youngsters want to be part of this future financial technology, immigration, and they don't see banking the way they used to. So what we really focus on is, I think it's important how people feel about where they work. So for me, it's important this whole, we always talk about the sense of belonging, but it's so important that people feel they're part of a team and they're part of an organization that will have a positive impact on its environment and on society. So for me, that's really what we try and offer people, to say that we see you. You're not just an employee, but we want to enable you to unlock your potential. And then we really make sure that our people understand that we have a vested interest in their career. We give them the opportunities, but also for them to understand the role they play, how it links to our broader strategy. So for me, to give people purpose, I think that's something that you don't always find when you go to these big organizations with thousands and thousands of employees, because you, the person, matters. And then our young talent programs, they're well known. We still invest in them, our class of program, our graduate program. And, later in early December, I'm actually presenting at our summer school to really just give these young, bright minds a sense of what corporate and investment banking is about and how they can really thrive in this environment. So for me, we focus a lot on the people, creating a high-performance environment and realizing their potential and how they can have a long-term career here. But it's a challenge and we keep on working at it.
Yeah, absolutely, because corporate investment banks are competing for professionals with specialized skills as well in areas like AI and data analytics, and to go along with sustainable finance and all of those other things. And the one thing that encourages me, though, is just recently a very unscientific cohort study of a few graduates from St. John's College and sixth form in St. Mary's. And there were quite a few tricks who wanted to get into corporate investment banking. They think it's an appealing, attractive, a sexy industry as well. A very difficult industry. Maybe you just tell us, what are the hours that you work weekly? And what are the young interns, what do you put them through in terms of their paces?
I won't tell you the hours I work, but I don't always lead by example on that front. But I think that what I can say is that you always hear about some of the international banks. I think we work reasonable hours, but to your point, it is hard work. And I think it's also, for me, these are personal decisions. How much do you want to put in? Because that will determine how much you get out, the progression you make in your career. But it is a tough environment. And because you've got so much to learn. When you get in here, you can have all the qualifications, but it's a learning environment and you need to invest the time to really get to that next level, to contribute towards the team that you're a part of. So the hours are challenging, but you don't work 24/7. But if there's a deal on the table and your client's expecting us to deliver, we put in the hours, but we make sure that we have fun as well. For me, it's about that balance, work hard, play hard. Yeah. And then people feel passionate, they love what they do, and then putting in the hours is not a sacrifice. It's part of the learning and growing experience.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line, isn't it? When it comes back to that culture that you said that you build inside the organization and you run through kind of brick walls for people that you've built that relationship with, it is lumpy. To your point, though, I mean, hours increase during those periods of intense deal activity, and then you really can be expected to slog, but in other times, probably not so much. Competition, again, to your point, for talent can also drive innovation. But how do you view the competitive landscape in South African banking at the moment, particularly with the rise of fintech and non-traditional players? What has your leadership learned from these disruptors that might inform RMB's approach going forward?
There's no doubt that the South African banking sector is undergoing a rapid digital transformation. And to your point, it's driven by the rise of fintechs and non-traditional players. And they've really reshaped the competitive landscape and compelled all of us traditional banks to adapt swiftly. So these new entrants, they've leveraged technology to offer integrated and seamless solutions. They spend time to understand client needs, address friction points. And that's really what we're doing in the way we put the client at the center of the business. So for me, it's about looking, understanding what they're doing and adapt your own way of doing business, spending time with our clients, understanding their strategies, what are their needs, how do we solve for them? And then secondly, I also think it's important to have the courage to disrupt yourself. And part of our strategy is, we call it our Blue Sky strategy, our Beyond Banking initiatives, where we look at the part of our business that's open for disruption, and then we step into that gap. And I mean, we launched a new venture called Intengo. It's a digital marketplace for debt, and we've seen great traction and interest in that. So I think you need to embrace it, keep your eye on the competition, but focus on differentiating yourself. And I think for us, it's an exciting stage of corporate and investment banking. So we're embracing it. We're aware of what's playing out in the market, and we just making sure that as a leadership body, we are agile and we adapt our own way of working, how we approach our strategy in our business.
I recently completed a deal survey for Ansarada, and it's really interesting to see how things like AI are influencing the due diligence process and enabling one to do more thorough deep dives quicker and increase productivity through that process, and therefore shorten the timelines to close transactions. And it's just a remarkable age that we're living in, with artificial intelligence almost touching every industry. I did note that you've embraced a new purpose statement to empower our people and clients to be exceptional together for all to thrive. Very inclusive. How does that, though, influence your day-to-day decisions as CEO? What does that look like in action?
For me, a purpose statement is really about giving people meaning. And I think it was great that I always had that sense of meaning at RMB, that I felt empowered and that I could have impact. And I think that is the key thing, that just in engaging with our people, how do we think about the role of RMB? Why does RMB exist? And it's really, at the end, we say for all to thrive. And we've identified 4 stakeholders that we serve. It's our people, our clients, our shareholders, and society. And we want all of them to thrive. And in our day-to-day, or my day-to-day decision making, I always keep them in mind. We want our people to be invested in our business. We want the best people in decisions. How does it impact our people? How does it impact our clients? Ultimately, our shareholder and society. And then it is this part about being exceptional together. I've stopped talking about collaboration. I think we need to think about partnership within our business and with our clients, because that's a different relationship, a partnership to collaboration. Partnership means you're together in this for the benefit of both parties. And for me, the role we play for our clients is we want them to execute successfully on their strategies. And I think if you keep those 4 stakeholders in mind and empower our people to deliver to our clients so they feel empowered and be exceptional, just having those cornerstones in your mind in decision making, that is really powerful, and make sure that we keep our eye on our North Star, which is our purpose, and make sure that we live that.
And I've got to ask you, there's some breaking news as we're chatting, and I mentioned the regulatory environment right up front and how difficult it's been to get especially large transactions over the line with the competition authorities. It's a very rare move, but Bloomberg now reporting that South Africa's Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition, Parks Tau, is actually taking on the Competition Commission, the very same commission that his department oversees, to appeal the decision to block Vodacom and Remgro's $730 million fiber deal. So, I mean, that's quite rare, isn't it? Parties coming together, not often seen to get the deals done in South Africa. There is a sense that the competition authorities and the pendulum has swung a little bit too far against large transactions. What would you like to see in order to create an environment that is conducive for M&A and that kind of economic activity in South Africa?
Yeah, I think that we've seen a lot of, some of the big, large M&A transactions that we've been involved in really taking an extended period of time to get approval. And, it talks to the question you asked earlier around M&A activity. And I think for South Africa's future growth, it's so important to get international investors invested in this country, create jobs and GDP growth. And I think that if we don't, to your point, get that pendulum to swing back where we invite the investors in, where we promote kind of M&A activity, that to me is what's important, because if it's too hard to do business in our country, people will look elsewhere. So we need to create the environment where the capital inflow happens and where transactions get approval much faster, because that is for me how you will increase the activity. And to the point you made earlier, corporate activity is important for economical growth. So for me, I think it's important for people to take a step back and look at these transactions.
Yeah.
How do we get to a decision faster? And how do we bear in mind the broader impact on the economy and on our society? Because at the end of the day, large doesn't mean uncompetitive. We are big banks in South Africa. We compete fiercely. And I think it's really always keeping in mind that impact on the economy overall.
It's really encouraging to see, at least at a political level, what that signals. And again, this government of national unity so far has made very little in terms of missteps, and things are heading in the right direction. The S&P upgrade recently from stable to positive on the outlook. The fact that we've made such great progress on ending load shedding. Yes, Transnet and the ports are still an issue. There was a recent Durban declaration to help get ahead of the construction mafia. That's encouraging. So when you look to the future of RMB and the South African economy, what excites you most? Equally, what keeps you up at night, and how are you planning to address those challenges in the years ahead?
For me, just looking into the future and looking back at the last year, I think that the outcome of the elections could not have been better. I think the government of national unity is what South Africa needs at this time. And it's really this pro-reform coalition that was created that's really exciting. And you can see it. There's definitely improved business confidence. It's still low, but I think people are feeling much more optimistic around our future. And I think the inflation numbers are incredible. Interest rates are going lower. So if we compare ourselves to other emerging markets, I think South Africa is on the brink of a bright future. To your point, no load shedding since March. There's some gradual reform momentum on logistics. And I think that, for me, those are positive signs. I attended the recent government business partnership phase 2. And I think if we can really come together as the private sector and the government, I think there's a lot that we can achieve to accelerate the reforms in South Africa. And we want to play our part in that. We want to find solutions to our economy's binding constraints. We really engage with our clients. We engage with government institutions, SOEs, to see what is the role that we can play in fast-tracking the future for South Africa. So we see some modest growth forecasts for the next couple of years. But I think a big positive, to your point on S&P, is the fact that we were thinking there's a downgrade in the near future. That change in outlook, we think, is tremendously positive for the country. So overall, there's work ahead. National Treasury is showing great efforts to reduce the debt servicing costs. But I think that it feels to me like everyone is facing in the right direction. And I think we're poised for a very exciting time in our country, and we want to play our part in that.
That point cannot be understated. The fact that we're all facing in the same direction. I think for too long, they've been in a team. Winning teams all know exactly their part and the role that they've got to play. So when you've got discord in the team and you're not all facing in the same direction, that you can't win. And finally, we are all facing in the same direction, much like Russie's got his Springboks facing very, very, very much in the same direction. Emrie, I've just got to ask you, as we're winding down the year, what does Emrie Brown do to unwind, to get away from what is probably one of the most stressful jobs in the country?
Michael, first of all, I love my holidays. I make a point of taking regular holidays. I think that time for rest and rejuvenation is so important. And two things, that's what I do, bush and beach. Love going to the bush and I said to someone recently, I don't even need to see an animal. I can just drive on that open vehicle, fresh air, and just experience this beautiful country of ours. And then I love to swim in the sea with my boys. So off to a nice December holiday with that feeling of the sand through your toes. That's why I live in South Africa. I've never been attracted to go and live anywhere else in the world because we've got such a beautiful and unique country that I'm staying right here in SA for this holiday.
Couldn't agree with you more. I was recently in Dublin for 10 days. And when you hear them advertising vitamin D supplements because they never see the sun, you realize just how lucky we are here in South Africa. Emrie Brown, thank you very much. CEO of RMB. Great chatting to you on our 50th episode of the Monocle Banking Podcast. Take care.
Thanks, Michael.
Well, Emrie's journey from embracing the twists and turns of a bit of a jungle gym career to leading RMB through, quite frankly, some of the darkest days of deal making to what is hopefully the start of a new M&A dawn in South Africa offers a lot of food for thought, a lot to digest there. Not just about the M&A environment, but about leadership, about the future of corporate and investment banking and sustainable finance in South Africa. What stood out today for me certainly was Emrie's focus on being authentic and collaboration between the private and public sectors as well as South Africa navigates a new era under a government of national unity and with interest rates set to ease. I think RMB is one of those investment banks that's clearly positioned not just to react to the changes, but to help shape what's next. And hopefully what's next are much, much better days in South Africa. Thanks for joining us on the Monocle Banking Podcast. We've only got 2 more episodes left for the year. Remember, if you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and catch future conversations with the leaders of finance. Until next time, I'm Michael Avery.